March 7, 1945. Germany. The banks of the Rhine River. This river, which has served as Germany's shield for centuries, is now its last line of defense. It is over 150 meters wide. The current is strong, and on the opposite bank, German troops are keeping every crossing point under fire. Allied commanders have been preparing for weeks: inflatable boats, bridge materials, engineer units. Everything was planned for the major crossing operation. The date was set. Coordination was established. But on that day, in the town of Remagen, something happened that wasn't part of any plan. When a reconnaissance team from the U.S. 9th Armored Division reached the riverbank, they couldn't believe their eyes. The Ludendorff Bridge was still standing. The Germans had tried to blow up the bridge. Explosives were detonated. The bridge shook and swayed, but it didn't collapse. And they had to take advantage of this miraculous moment to cross to the other side. Immediately. Now. A lieutenant made a decision. He created a fait accompli, and American soldiers crossed the Rhine River, unplanned, unprepared, and entirely on the spur of the moment. This crossing was the final major turning point on the Western Front of World War II. This battle took place between two forces. On one side, the U.S. First Army, under the command of General Courtney Hodges, the American forces taking their first steps into the heart of Germany. On the other side, Nazi Germany's Rhine defense units, largely exhausted soldiers, struggling to hold their final line of defense. Dates: March 7th to 25th, 1945. Duration: 18 days. Location: the town of Remagen and the Ludendorff Bridge. This bridge over the Rhine River became the most important bridge in history that day. A small but critical note: the Rhine River has served as Germany's natural defensive barrier against the West for centuries. Napoleon had crossed it. It was crossed during World War I. Hitler, however, declared, "If the Rhine holds, Germany holds." And at Remagen, that belief was buried in history by a single bridge. Field analysis: the Rhine River serves as a nearly perfect, natural defensive barrier. With a width ranging from 150 to 300 meters, its strong current and deep bed make crossing by inflatable boat or on foot extremely dangerous. Attempting to cross the river under defensive fire from the opposite bank is a type of operation that has historically resulted in heavy casualties. Remagen's location, however, is unique. Two hills rising right next to the city, Erpeler Lay and Kalvarienberg, dominate both sides of the bridge. The Germans were able to subject the bridge to crossfire by stationing artillery and machine guns on these hills. But there is also a paradoxical aspect to the geography. Crossing was possible as long as the bridge remained intact. And the bridge's survival stemmed from a failure in German engineering that day. The explosives could not be detonated at the exact right time or with full force. This was the war's most critical technical failure. The geography had been set up in the Germans' favor, but luck was on the American side that day. Force comparison: by March 1945, the balance of power was beyond dispute. Germany's defensive capabilities had largely been exhausted. On the American side, dozens of divisions within the First Army, strong artillery support, fully operational supply lines, and air superiority. Planning for the Rhine crossing had been underway for weeks, and all necessary engineering materials were in place. On the German side, relatively weak and exhausted units in the Remagen area. The majority of the best divisions had been depleted on the Eastern Front or following the Ardennes. The task of defending the bridge had been assigned to units already carrying a burden far beyond their capacity. But this is where the mystery begins. Why couldn't the Germans blow up the bridge in time? The explosives had been placed, the order had been given, everything was ready. But at the critical moment, the detonation failed. The bridge was damaged but remained standing. Was it sabotage? A technical malfunction? Or did it stem from a commander in a panic, giving the order too late? An investigation was launched, and 4 German officers were executed. But the true answer remains unknown to this day. And this uncertainty adds a distinct air of mystery to this page of history. Preparation phase and command structure. The most important figure in this battle was not a general. It was a lieutenant. Karl H. Timmerman, 9th Armored Division, 27th Armored Infantry Battalion, 24 years old. Born in Nebraska. And on March 7, 1945, he was the first American officer to see the bridge standing before him when he reached Remagen. The decision Timmerman made in that moment is one of the boldest split-second decisions in military history. There was no time to consult higher command. The bridge could collapse at any moment, or the Germans might attempt a second explosion. The decision had to be made now. "We're crossing," he said. And they crossed. At the front, General Omar Bradley couldn't believe it when he heard the news. Eisenhower, however, immediately acted to turn the situation into an opportunity. He reorganized all plans to pour reinforcements onto the bridge. On the German side, the officer in charge of the bridge was Captain Willy Bratke. He received the order to blow up the bridge and carried it out. But the result wasn't what he'd expected. Bratke was tried in Germany after the war and found not guilty. The lack of explosives and a technical malfunction revealed that responsibility lay not with individuals, but with the circumstance. When Hitler heard the news, he flew into a rage. He had the 4 officers he held responsible executed. This decision further shattered the already crumbling morale of the German command. The chronological course of the war. March 7, 1945. Afternoon. The bridge stands. Around 3 p.m. reconnaissance units of the 9th Panzer Division reach Remagen. They see the bridge, damaged but passable. The Germans are preparing for a second explosion. Time is running out. Timmerman gives the order to cross. The first soldiers step onto the bridge. German fire begins. Machine guns, snipers, artillery. The soldiers run, take cover, run again. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And the opposite bank. March 7th evening, bridgehead established. A few hundred American soldiers are holding the eastern bank of the Rhine. The bridge is still standing. Reinforcements are arriving. When Bradley receives the news, he calls Eisenhower. "We're on the Rhine." Eisenhower: "Well, what are you waiting for? Cross?" Within hours, 5 divisions are directed toward the bridge. March 8th to 17th, expansion of the bridgehead. The Germans are trying to destroy the bridge by any means. Artillery, aircraft, V-2 rockets, all are directed at the bridge. But the bridge holds. Meanwhile, American engineers are setting up 2 inflatable bridges side by side. Crossing capacity is increasing. The bridgehead is expanding by the hour. German counterattacks are being repelled. March 17th, 1945. The bridge collapses. The Ludendorff Bridge, which had sustained accumulating damage, suddenly collapses. 28 American engineers working on it fall into the river. 25 of the 28 are rescued. 3 are missing. But the bridge is no longer needed. The pontoon bridges are ready. The bridgehead is secure, and the path into Germany is open. March to April 1945. The final push. American forces pouring out from the Remagen bridgehead are flooding into Germany. The Ruhr encirclement operation begins. Germany's industrial heartland is surrounded. By mid-April, American and Soviet forces meet at the Elbe River. And on May 8, 1945, Germany surrenders. Strategic and psychological impacts. The strategic impact of the Remagen crossing was immediate and lasting. The Rhine line collapsed. Germany's last natural defensive barrier had been breached. From that point on, German forces had no geographical refuge left in the West to hold on to. The end of the war was now a matter of weeks. What would have happened if the Remagen Bridge had been blown up in time? The planned Rhine Crossing would still have taken place, but weeks later as part of a much larger operation and with far heavier losses. Montgomery's northern crossing was already planned, but Remagen likely shortened this process by 2 or 3 weeks. And in war, 2 or 3 weeks mean thousands of lives. The psychological impact was immense. For German soldiers and the public, crossing the Rhine was a sign that the war was truly over. For Hitler and the High Command, however, the execution of the officers who failed to blow up the bridge was the most painful symbol of helplessness. On the American side, Remagen became one of the greatest morale-breaking moments on the Western Front. With an unplanned, spontaneous decision, the course of history had changed. And this reminded every soldier in the war of one thing. Sometimes a single moment is more valuable than all the plans. Lieutenant Timmerman returned to Nebraska after the war. He didn't speak much, but he died young in 1951. The hero of Remagen did not live long enough to enjoy the fame of his heroism. The Ludendorff Bridge no longer exists today. It was demolished over the years, but its piers still stand along the banks of the Rhine. And within those piers stands a museum today, the Peace Museum. Germany transformed the remains of that bridge, once crossed by its enemy, into a symbol of peace. This is one of history's most powerful transformations. Remagen teaches us this. The fate of war is sometimes determined not by great armies, but by a single person in the right place at the right time. If Timmerman hadn't said, "We're crossing," that day, the bridge might have collapsed just minutes later. Or the Germans might have successfully carried out a second explosion, and history would have been written very differently. But he said it, and they crossed. In the history of war, seized moments are just as decisive as missed opportunities. Remagen is the most striking example of a seized moment. In our next video, we'll leave behind the final major phases of the Western Front in World War II. It's time to shift our focus from the European front to the Pacific. And in the Pacific, a forgotten, little-told, yet extremely bloody war awaited. 1944. A different island from the Netherlands. Japan's last major stronghold. And the price paid to take it. Not Dunkirk, not Normandy. An island less known today, but just as important. See you in the next video.